Business owners, you have to speak to your politician. You have to fight for what you need. You have to go against every single politician that's going against you and your customers and your business, your future. That's where it has to be. You need to address this right away.
If you're in business, you're in politics. That's the reality, right? You have to advocate for your business and your industry. I don't even want to say influence. You're just trying to expose them to make an informed decision.
Or how about we try something a little bit different? Don't fight them, invite them. I'm Faisal Karmali, and welcome to Karmali Exchange. Well, welcome. This is going to be very interesting. I'm talking to, about bankruptcy, going from that all the way to growing your business at 16 different locations. That's huge. Talking about being in an industry where it's pretty much saturated. There's so many players. How do you stand out from the rest? And I've been saying this for a long time now. Business owners need to get involved as advocates in the political stream, making sure their voices are heard. And we found someone who's doing all three in one shot. Please join me with Chris Smith, President and CEO of Fitness World. Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, Faisal.
I want to get right into the whole bankruptcy thing. I think people need to understand what you went through. Walk us through. Pandemic hits, and you have to file for bankruptcy. What was the story behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you the quick Coles Notes version of it. I was the president and CEO of an entity that was formerly 3 different brands, 29 locations, and the ownership group of that business in the early days of the pandemic made the decision to, bankrupt that business and put that business into bankruptcy. Probably one of the first businesses in Canada even to do so at that stage of kind of what was going on. Through that process and working with the bank and the trustees and all those individuals, it was really suggested to me by others to say, hey, you might be the best person possible to buy this business and bring it out the other side. Frankly, at that point, I hadn't really even contemplated that as something I was interested in doing. It was pretty tough days, pretty dark days when you terminate or fire 2,000 people and you're kind of the face of the business and taking a lot of the blame. But it really wasn't my decision to put into bankruptcy, but it certainly was my decision to buy the business and bring it out the other side, right? Which ultimately I was fortunate enough to do, and the bank chose me as their partner on a go-forward basis, and able to kind of complete an asset purchase agreement and put the business together in a way that we thought was sustainable on a go-forward basis, and that's what we've been able to do.
Many business owners, general public, will consider bankruptcy a failure. And this is why I wanted to talk to you about this on the show. A situation like bankruptcy is not always a failure. It's a point of recovery, it's a point of inflection, and it's a point where you can actually kick some fucking ass around here. And so I wanted to talk about how great you guys are doing now since you've come on board and taken over. You have this asset purchase. You now are at, I believe, 16 locations. Am I correct with that? 16 locations?
Yeah, I mean, I right-sized the business. There was 29 locations. I closed a number of them if I didn't have a lot of confidence that, based on what was going on. At that point, there were so many unknowns. One of the kind of epic things that we were able to do is we were actually renegotiate all of our leases. So we either got, significant addendums and or rewrote, 15 commercial leases in 45 days. As part of that reopening process. And even that experience alone, not to mention dealing with all the lawyers, the banks, the trustees, all the other different, professionals that you get an opportunity to interact with in a situation like this. Yeah, there is some great learning if you're open to learning it. And then obviously, yeah, there's a lot of adversity that you got to push through, a lot of early mornings, a lot of late nights and everything in between, but certainly an incredible experience for me and the team that I was able to put together.
The media and social media have glamorized entrepreneurs and business owners. But people don't realize that this is part of the shit that goes on when you're dealing with a business. And so how do you focus going forward and saying, this is where we're headed, even though we were just there at the point where we consider it bankruptcy, or possibly some people will call it failure?
Yeah, I mean, my viewpoint certainly could be different than others, but, when I look at the Canadian viewpoint, I look at the programs that were put in place and things to kind of help businesses from an overall subsidy perspective. If you compare that to, say, the U.S., in Canada, we were actually very fortunate in the way in terms of how support was provided to business and really the access that was able to be provided. Obviously, hoops you had to jump through, like we're talking about the paperwork and the minutia of getting through that versus obviously the day-to-day of what we want to be focused on is just making a difference for people in their day-to-day lives, providing world-class fitness services and amenities and all the things just help people move better, feel better, think better, all those types of things. But yeah, there's a lot more than that goes into business, and I think the average individual certainly I think recognizes that at least at a high level, but certainly probably doesn't appreciate or understand the complexity that's involved in that. And again, particularly from a bankruptcy, that business had well north of 100,000 members. So a lot of those people are upset, right? And rightfully so. And so just even dealing with consumer affairs, right? Start dealing with all of the contract stuff, dealing with all the banks, the credit card companies, all the things that went with that. Certainly very, very complex. We made a lot of decisions early on strategically that we're going to do a lot of goodwill. So we honored everything, right? We honored a bunch of memberships. We did a bunch of decisions that we thought were maybe not good for our bank account, but certainly the right thing for those communities and the right thing for those customers or members that we were wanting to stay members, right? And so we made a lot of those decisions early on to kind of do the right thing, which, is often a cliche in business, easier said than done. But that's what we did early on. And certainly we would say, looking back, a lot of those decisions were definitely the right decision.
When you look at where we are right now, a lot of people will say to me, the fitness industry is somewhat saturated. But your brand, holy shit, you guys are so well known. You've got such a great rapport with the public. You've got your members love you. What are you guys doing that's so different that can compete with the competition?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. So when you look at kind of what we've done, everything from the branding to the paint to the light package to the music that's there, we want an energy. We want a vibe. We want that kind of place away from home, if you will. And what we do know after the pandemic on businesses and industries that were challenged, we certainly know that businesses that offer a service are really thriving, particularly those that offer great service. And so everything that we can do to provide world-class customer service, treat people the right way, we look at our Google reviews, and our Google reviews are some of the highest, not just in our marketplace, but frankly, the industry. And so, we look at that, and that's going from worst to first, because certainly coming out of the bankruptcy, people weren't saying a lot of great things. And that was really just a reflection, again, of I went to the public, I went to members, I went to a lot of people. I said, hey, what should we do? What should be different? How should we build this business? What would be a gym that you'd want to keep coming to? What would be a place that you'd want to tell your friends about? And getting all those answers and all those surveys, both formal and informal, anecdotal, data, subjective, objective, you name it, getting all that information to kind of say, okay, well, this is what consumers are asking for.
And I think that's what separates you from your competition is you're community focused, not cookie cutter. It's not the same type of experience in each community because every community within the Lower Mainland is different. There's different demographics. There's different needs.
Right? Whether that be to have child minding in a club versus to not have child minding. Is that a community where really there's young parents, or is it a community that's made up of more working professionals that aren't in that place and phase of their life? And so we've really kind of adapted each of our clubs to really meet the community where they want to be. And that's been a really good formula for us.
Chris, the next point that I wanted to bring up was about you getting involved in the political side, because I've talked to a lot of business owners across this country. A lot of them are silent. They don't think it's their arena to get involved in. They're not stepping up and speaking about all issues that are not only important to their own business, but their industry as a total, or as business owners as a community. When you look at your reason to get into being more an advocate in the political arena, what spurred that? What was the trigger, the spark that got you in there?
I think, if you're not advocating for your business, then you're not really in business, right? Like if you're in business, you're in politics. That's the reality, right? You have to advocate for your business and your industry.
How does someone like an average business owner get involved in now?
Different industries have different types of trade associations or things that you can participate in, which we certainly believe in and we do. So we're members of IHRSA, the International Health and Racket Sport Association. We're also members of FIC, which is Fitness Industry Canada. So that's certainly much more on a local level. And the folks that head up that organization in Canada in particular have done a phenomenal job advocating for our industry and fighting for industry. So everything from tax laws that make things more difficult than they need to be, and or asking for waivers that just really are unnecessary and burdensome, to even just making sure our voice is being heard on things like minimum wage, which again, I want to pay people a fair wage and I want people to be able to earn. But even the recent announcement in BC of $1.10 increase that was just announced, I mean, The reality is that'll cost my business $20,000 a month. And everyone's like, well, good. Well, I mean, it's good up until what point?
I think you've nailed something. Many times, business owners like you and I, or entrepreneurs, have been seen as the villain, the bad guy in the story. As the cost of labor goes up, either because of an increase in minimum wage or purely because of supply and demand market conditions, we're entrepreneurs at the end of the day. We're going to be innovative enough to look at how we can help not only the business grow, not only help our customer, but also help the bottom line, because we also have business partners, shareholders. We've taken risk. We want to see a return on our investment as well. When we put all that into place, we're going to be innovative. That's why we exist as business owners and entrepreneurs.
At what point can businesses continue to be in business, and or will there continue just to be an evolution in technological solutions that will just ultimately phase out a lot of these jobs, which is unfortunate. And that's going to be the reality. And you've seen this already in the fast food industry. I mean, it's all over the fast food industry. You can't walk in a McDonald's now and talk to somebody. I mean, it's very difficult to do.
So when we have politicians that come out and say, we're just going to raise the minimum wage and that could cure all the problems, they have to realize we're going to be innovative enough to make sure that everything fits. And we're going to look at technology to change things. And that's going to happen. And there's going to be technology companies that are going to come out and say, hey, look, you can have this technology and get rid of employees. That doesn't help the economy overall, especially for a demographic who rely on these entry-level jobs, on this experience that they need.
There's been a lot of economic studies that have been done already in a number of cities that were some of the first to move to, say, a $15 hourly wage, where they're now looking at it going, man, we need to really slow this down or rethink this, because the overall, changes and the kind of the domino effect, if you will, those unintended consequences are real in terms of job loss, right? There's a significant job loss that occurs when you push wages up that high, because you're making all these technological solutions highly affordable at that point. And so, that's going to be the harsh reality for a lot of those jobs, which again, I don't know that the folks making those decisions as we've made them have been really contemplating that.
I'm in agreement with you. I think that there needs to be more advocacy coming from business owners about this is not just about greed. This is about the bigger picture. I think if we take care of our employees, I think if we look for the long term for our employees, we can actually make a benefit to them. But if we look purely at just minimum wage and those types of conditions, you're going to have entrepreneurs who are going to be innovative to make sure that they can reach all the goals, including the bottom line. Because any business that doesn't have a bottom line is going to fail over time. And I think that's what the government needs to understand. What are 2 or 3 things business owners can do to get involved, to have Parliament, have their provincial legislation or their municipal government hear their voice? What can they do? Give me 2 or 3 ideas.
Yeah, so in our case, right, the health minister and those ministers that were directly involved in, on a daily basis. So you want to definitely have a relationship with them as best you can. So at a minimum, you certainly want to be writing to them and reaching out to their offices so they know who you are. Certainly your local MLA, and same thing, kind of, reaching out to them. And it's not just always to complain about things that you don't like, right? Invite them to your events, invite them to your grand openings, invite them to things that you're doing in your business as well, because they want to be part of that community. I mean, they ran all of their election platforms is that they are going to represent the people of that community. So invite them out, right? Have them involved in your business. So, it's one thing to think about a fitness center and it's 25,000 square feet and employs 100 people. But when you see it in action, and then you see all these people working out and having fun and the smiles on their faces, and then you realize that all those people in that building at that given time are part of, say, that constituency and part of that community, that's when I think you can really get the resonation that you're ultimately looking for with, a particular leader that you're trying to, I don't even want to say influence, you're just trying to expose them to make an informed decision, right? I don't want to influence them to make a decision that they're not in agreement with. I just want to, have them make an informed decision, understanding everything that's going on and the complexities around my communities, my clubs, my team members, et cetera, right? That's what I really want them to be able to do.
From everything you've gone through over the last handful of years, many business owners would have just thrown in the towel a long time ago. For those business owners who are going through some really shitty things right now, who think it's time to throw in the towel, what's your advice for them?
Well, basically, don't do it. Don't give up, right? Don't give in, don't give up, kind of the old Jim Valvano speech when he was fighting cancer. I did a lot of research when the bankruptcy initial happened about what happens to C-level leaders in this kind of adversity. And it was basically most of them never returned to C-level work because of the amount of stress, trauma, PTSD, whatever you want to call it. And I was just kind of determined not to become a statistic. And although I had to terminate 2,000 people, I started doing the math. And I said, well, if I do this right, I can put 700 or 1,000 people back to work. And if I don't put these people back to work, I'm not sure anyone else will. And I just really wanted that for a bit of a redemption story as well, right? Because again, I didn't agree with what happened to the big business in the beginning of it all. And so this was my ability to kind of prove it, right? So if you think that you're so right, then do it, which I did. You know, I don't know a lot of people that borrowed $11 million during the height of the pandemic, but I did. And I went for it, and I've got a bunch of people to work, and we're doing great, and the business is going well, and we're growing and thriving. And, you know, the business advice is kind of simple, right? But it's kind of no risk it, no biscuit, right? So if you really want something and you're willing to work for it, and you're going to go after it, and you're willing to pour your heart and your soul into it like any entrepreneur would, which means, again, early morning, late night, 7 days a week, if that's what's needed, then you can make anything happen. It's not necessarily manifesting it, but I'm going to outwill it, right? I'm just not going to be outworked. I'm not going to be out hustled, and we're just going to grind until we can make ourselves get where we need to go. And so I would tell any entrepreneur or any owner that's on tough times, is as much as they might think it's not possible, I'd say work harder and then maybe work smarter as well. But there is a way. There's always a way.
That was fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your time, Faisal. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching the Karmali Exchange. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can also follow me on social media at Faisal Karmali, where we can continue the business conversation.